Welcome back, Red Spotters! Another show, the Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis, joined here by David, of course. Our weekly segment recaps here on Red Spotlight of the latest Marvel Disney Plus series. This would happen to be Miss Marvel. Last week we discussed episode 3, and this week we're discussing episode 4, Seeing Red, which hilariously enough, if you thought the Turning Red comparisons were done with this show, well, now we have an episode titled literally Seeing Red, and my head immediately went to like Turning Red. Although that's not at all what I guess they meant here, but anyway, that's what we're here to discuss here on Red Spotlight number 403. Okay, so a couple of things here real quick. The reactions for Thor: Love and Thunder, the upcoming Marvel film coming out in theaters, have already dropped. And again, you know, I the last couple of Marvel movies has been really entertaining to cover in terms of like initial reactions, because you never really know like how, at least we, our group here, and I can definitely speak for myself, I never know how to feel anymore when it comes to the early reactions, because, you know, we have the typical positive glowing reviews from the crowd that, quite frankly, with all due respect, they're there to give positive reviews, because Marvel knows that these people usually always give positive reviews. If you can give a positive reaction to Black Widow, you can give a positive reaction to any Marvel movie. So let's just be real about that. So that's why they invite some of them to come back for the first initial wave of reviews. But then, of course, there are a second wave and a third wave of reviews that come out and reactions that kind of like, give us a clearer picture as to how the film was received. And, it's kind of like gone back and forth, the No Way Home, early reactions were very like unsurprising, and then we saw the film and it's like, well, yeah, that's exactly why I would have that reaction. The Eternals one, to an extent, was also unsurprising, because that film had very little interest in being a Marvel movie. And I think it kind of caused the reaction that it got, for better and for worse. And then with Multiverse of Madness, one of the early things that came out of that film were there were the usual detractors that do not vibe with any kind of style, or particularly with Raimi's style. And then there were, some concerning signs about Wanda's character, of which ended up being at least divisive, I would say, among our group. It would seem that Peter and Kyle very much liked with how Wanda was handled in that film, and of course, the Morenos and myself were not so pleased with how that, turned out and everything. But, it's been kind of a rocky bit here for the Marvel films. And I think when we discussed just the first episode of Miss Marvel to get everybody recapped on or caught up on how we feel about these, it hasn't been great lately. And I feel like, that's kind of the shortest way of saying it. It hasn't been great lately. I will say, though, I did catch Multiverse of Madness again, not in its entirety, but I did see, the Normies, which is one of my favorite reaction channels. They did a reaction to Multiverse of Madness, I believe, over this weekend, and I was really surprised with how much of the film I remember from a visual standpoint. Again, the only reason I would say that this film is going to age well is because of the pure visualistic standpoint of the movie, because Raimi brought that style all over the place and some memorable shots, the way he held that camera, and of course a lot of the designs when it comes to the ghosts and the zombie Doctor Strange, and of course, Elizabeth Olsen's performance, that definitely, and of course, lest we forget Danny Elfman's amazing score. I mean, that definitely brought it, and it really does go a long way to make up for some pretty weak characterization, I would say, throughout the whole movie, and then some weak parts when it comes to the Illuminati. So yeah, I just wanted to, just let that out there and everything. So with Thor: Love and Thunder, this is kind of the only movie I feel like all of us have been on the same page about being excited for, because we love Taika Waititi's work. Of course, we all really liked to love Thor Ragnarok, and this seemed like it was going to be entirely his film that was unconstrained and not held back by, Marvel Studios needing Thor to end up someplace else after this movie. And so the hopes are definitely high. And from the initial reactions that I shared with all of you last night, it seems very much so that the takeaways are that Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman's chemistry is on fire, and their romance is one of the best aspects, if not the highlight of the film. It definitely has amazing humor, as well as a lot of touching moments, and I've seen a lot of reactions say a lot of heart. And to me, that is all I wanted from this movie. And I'm very happy to hear that, and I'm very excited to see that come to fruition when I go see it. I have also noticed that there have been some notable detractors of the film who notably have a very tried history with Taika Waititi. I guess you could say, if you're not a fan of Taika's brand of humor, it doesn't seem like it worked for these people, because there was even one tweet that said to the effect that basically saying that they were reminded of how much they hated Jojo Rabbit by watching Thor: Love and Thunder, which I can't even imagine that. I know there was a backlash of the film because it satirized Nazis, which I don't even know how that's even a controversial idea. That's been a thing for like decades at this point. And I thought Jojo Rabbit was kind of like the perfect blend of like Taika Waititi's sweet humor, but then also his sweet like heart as well. And it did win the Academy Award, at least I forget, for Best Adapted Screenplay. So Taika's a talented man, and I can't wait to see this movie. And I'm so excited because, for the first time in a long time, I cannot be the only one that noticed this, David, but like the reactions seem to be focused on like the main characters and their arcs and how great they were and how much it was about them and the story. And you know what? It just seems like for the most part, a lot of the recent Marvel films have not, it sounds strange, but have not, had that as a priority. And I love these reactions. Your thoughts?
No, yeah. They're kind of what I expected. I was really hoping for the heart and humor of it all. I'm very excited about the fact that, Hemsworth and Portman have great chemistry in the movie.
Yeah.
I thought they were okay in the past movies, maybe because it's all heightened now, the movies.
There was something to that relationship in the first movie. There were like glances, small glimpses of like what could happen.
Yeah.
But then the Dark World came along and it just like forgot that completely. And those two had nothing going on with each other. That's why I think a lot of people weren't like angry when she didn't come back for Ragnarok.
Yeah. And then, the humor, that's really what I'm excited about. I really do like the humor in Taika Waititi's movie. I never laughed so hard. Which one was it? What We Do in the Shadows, his movie. Just right from the beginning, like the way Taika, his character, was getting out of the coffin, and he couldn't I don't know what. It made me laugh so much. But yeah, I'm really hoping for some cool action, which from what the reviews say, the ending of it seems like typical Marvel stuff. I don't know.
Sure.
Or who knows? You never really know with Taika's movies, though, what you're gonna get. So
yeah, curious. I've seen some contradictory tweets. Some people who said that the villain and the plot resemble much more familiar Marvel fare, and then I've also seen the opposite, where some rather strict individuals who I've noticed, like Alicia Grasso, who I've quoted here in the past on certain shows, who was actually quite complimentary toward Christian Bale's gore and how he was used. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects here. There were some tweets that I saw that they felt that Valkyrie was sidelined, but then there were a lot more that said, no, she was a big part of this movie and she's amazing. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's interesting, like, how many characters there are in this movie. I do want to say I'm already pissed off because, and I know like it's been confirmed for a long ass time, and I'm so grateful that even if it's just a fucking cameo or just one scene, as it looks like it's going to be, that they opened the door to invite her back. But I'm kind of like a little miffed here because Jamie Alexander, I feel like she gives so much whenever like she's asked to come back to do something as Lady Sif. And she's such like a wonderful presence. And I can't for the life of me understand why it is that they refuse to incorporate her into the main ensemble of the films that she's supposed to be such a big part of. Like, I know that, she was nowhere to be seen on Ragnarok, and I understand there were some scheduling conflicts with the show that she was doing. I believe it was Blind Spot. But with Love and Thunder, there was an announcement, and she was going to come back, and we are expecting to see Lady Sif in Thor: Love and Thunder. But if you've seen the marketing material, you wouldn't know it, and that suggests she's just not in it very much, and that kind of really disappoints me, because I would think that, I don't know, can you just imagine how much more the ensemble around Thor would be pumped up? I know, I expect great things from the mighty Thor, Jane Foster and Valkyrie and Korg. But honestly, like, maybe I guess they felt that if they were to have Lady Sif in the ensemble, it would have created an unnecessary love triangle, because she does have, like, feelings for Thor. But I don't know if, at least she did. So much time has passed since I don't even know if that even means anything anymore. Yeah. And I don't even know, like, your thoughts.
No, I was going to say, I don't think Taika would want to do a love triangle between them. If anything, I feel like he would have, like, come up with some crazy shit for her, being like, where the heck have you been for the past who knows how many years? And, like, right. He would have created some crazy scenario. It's like, I've been fighting all these other monsters for the hell of it.
And I mean, I think they're gonna go with this whole, like, King Valkyrie thing, and if they want to give her a queen, which from what I've read, or from what I've heard, because they did this whole stunt, and a lot of it is a stunt at Comic-Con when they announced Love and Thunder and that Natalie Portman will be coming on here, and Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie, introduced Natalie Portman, saying that every king of Asgard needs her queen or whatever, and then they brought in the mighty Thor. I don't know if they're going to go in that direction, because a lot of the tweets and a lot of the trailers seems to be focused on the relationship between Thor and Jane. So I can't for the life of me expect they're going to do that, unless, I don't know. But if you really want to give Valkyrie her queen, well, Lady Sif is right there. I mean,
true.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I would love that, honestly.
There's a character here that I think has a fan base, and you continually do nothing with her. I'm just like, come on, man. That's one of the things I'm already upset about, because I can tell from the lack of presence in these trailers, she gets nothing. Like, I think even Meek gets more than Lady Sif. I think Meek had, like, one cutaway scene. I saw a clip, and Meek was, like, wearing a suit, weirdly enough. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. You saw that? I don't know. But that's an example of Taika's humor that really works for me. So I don't know. I'm really excited for this movie. I really am.
Oh yeah, same.
And I guess the goats made an impression.
Really?
Yeah, the goats, Thor's goats, which I guess he uses you see it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Also, Russell Crowe got a lot of shout outs as Zeus.
Oh, that is Russell Crowe.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He looks. I was so confused, because I was like, it looks like him, but I can't tell. I feel like he looks completely different.
I mean, he's also, I think, almost 60 now, or yeah, he's almost 60. So I mean, he is getting older, but yeah, that is Russell Crowe.
Okay, because I feel like if you get Russell Crowe to play Zeus, I feel like he will very much play like, I am the mighty Zeus or something like that. But no, it sounds like, and I will take away your clothes. Like, he has like a funny voice song. Yeah. So that's why I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Also, like, I know there was a lot cut out of the movie at the last minute. And who knows? Look, I don't even know at this point if I should expect deleted scenes. Maybe they'll have them out for, like, whenever it hits Disney Plus or whatever. But, like, I just saw today that Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster and Peter Dinklage's, I think, is it Eitri? Or was it a different character? There were other characters that have been here that have had connections to Thor. They shot scenes for this movie that were cut out. And my heart kind of sank, because I love those characters and I like to see them back and interact. Yeah. But I mean, I understand, of course, not for nothing. I'm curious to see how it plays, because this is the shortest Marvel movie in quite some time. It's basically an hour and 59 minutes.
Okay.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I've also heard, some people suggest in the tweets that the first act is a little rushed and a little, like, wobbly, which, I mean, That's not to be fair. I did see some people, but a lot of people really didn't care how hilariously rushed the first act of No Way Home was. Like, do we really have to go back? Right?
That's
like,
so true.
they were rushing to wrap up one movie, you know, the movie they were originally going to tell, and then they were like, okay, let's go on to the multiverse stuff. That was hilarious. Like, it was like this montage where it's like, oh, and now Peter Parker's crime troubles are they're fixed. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, so we'll see if it's like that. You know, first acts can be wonky sometimes. So I remember Rogue One had a really like wobbly first act.
I had it. The first half was wobbly.
Yeah, well, yeah, basically. yeah. I mean, it kind of settled down when we got to the main ensemble after they got off Jeddah, you know? But it still was. It was what it was. Yeah. I mean, the only reason to watch that film is for its third act, if we're being real.
Yeah.
And it's not really for character, it's for spectacle, which it definitely delivered. Anyway, that's where we are with Thor: Love and Thunder. Let's get on to Ms. Marvel, who I'm increasingly convinced has... honestly, it's really... I'm a little conflicted about this. I feel bad. I really honestly do feel bad that Kamala Khan has gotten the short end of the stick, as it were, because based off of, you know, data information released from Samba TV and just a general impression out there, and we discussed last week that, you know, there were other factors, of course, that this was dropping at the exact same time as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then, of course, there being other streaming options, and a healthy box office now that Ms. Marvel seemingly is getting lost in the shuffle. Not that it's bombing by any means, but it's just not performing on par with some of the other Disney Plus series, which, you know, from my perspective is quite unfortunate, considering that this is quite easily the best one that they've ever had. Like, I think if we're being real here, like, and I still cling to the emotion that Wanda and Vision gave me in WandaVision, but I think just... it's kind of hard to see how Ms. Marvel isn't labeled the best series that Disney Plus has ever had. Like, I think they are operating on a level that is, quite frankly, well, it's at a level of competency and on all cylinders that a lot of the other stories have had, like, you know, glaring holes of issues with. And... the reason why I feel mixed on this is because, well, I mean, it's really hard to, like, feel bad because... to feel too bad because, like, Miss Marvel's not going to be ignored. Like, she's going to be such a crucial part of, like, the Marvel's movies. You know, the Captain Marvel movies. And people, you know, the fact that this isn't the MCU, they're going to give it a level of, like, credibility and legitimacy over any of the Marvel Entertainment shows that, quite frankly, I would say I feel even worse for because there are many people out there who just simply refuse to see those shows. And I think ultimately that's where my issue goes back into, because I think we're now coming into a point, because there are some people I've seen say that there is nothing in Ms. Marvel that's worth even seeing to keep their attention in the MCU.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God fucking damn it. Like, if it was bad enough when like these other shows that, with all due respect, had no connection to the films. Okay, maybe, even though I hate it, I could understand it. But then here we are, and then you're hearing things like, well, you know, it's not giving me enough, you know, connections. It's not giving me enough Easter eggs. And here I am just pulling out my hair thinking, like, what is wrong with you people? All the while, least we forget, the media is having this conversation about, because, you know, Comic-Con's coming up. Kevin Feige's going to give, like, a big, like, presentation of the movies coming up. But there's been an ongoing media narrative about, like, well, what is Phase 4 about? Thematically speaking, what is Phase 4 about, and what are all these films tying into? And, you know, again, and I know I've said this phrase so many times, but for the life of me, I can't get over how moronic and just, quite frankly, dumb a lot of the talking points that come out of the press in the movie world, even, but of course, especially the political world and the news that actually affects people's lives, I just can't get over how dumb they are, because why would anybody think that Phase 4, when you look at the films that have come out, that these movies would be tying into anything? Did Kevin Feige ever say, oh yeah, Phase 4 is going to be a collection of films that is going to tie into one another and build up to this big event like it did for, you know, the Infinity Saga or the first 3 phases. I guess people just assumed, but Feige never said that. And it was very clear that when these movies were announced and these shows were announced, that it would not be an interconnected storyline the entire way. Like this expectation that all of these projects were promised to connect to one another was a fantasy, number one. And number two, it's frustrating because you're not allowing these to be their own stories, which is why the Marvel Studios people feel so insistent on making sure that every single project has something to say that it's connected to the MCU, which, you know, makes people like us feel so frustrated that they feel the need to do this every single time. That wasn't a thing. Like, you watch these movies, they do not connect and they're not building up to anything. They're just buying time to the next thing. They're just making movies because they're a movie studio and they're making money. Now, everything they do has to be interconnected. And I'm the fact that there are people who would not watch this show because they're not getting enough connections, I'm like, I don't know if I even buy that myself, because I'm sorry, Moon Knight did really well in the ratings, and that didn't have very many, if any, connections. So it leads me wondering, okay, well, is Miss Marvel also suffering from, you know, what other projects were suffering like, which is that it focuses on a non-white, you know, family of a different culture, and it's very much littered and drenched in those aspects of that culture? Like, what is really at the heart of all of this? I don't know how it is that this team are telling a wonderful story. It's not perfect. There are some issues I have, particularly with the clandestine, that we mentioned last week and we'll get to this week. But, you know, for the most part, it's hitting the target on a lot of the core things that make a superhero story great, that a lot of the other shows, quite frankly, have not been able to get anywhere close to. And it's just baffling how we're here 4 episodes in, and this is the reaction. David.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things going against this. Ms. Marvel, again, I said it many times, she's a fairly new character, not many people know about. And so it's just, and it's so annoying because, people get mad when you like race swap or gender swap, past characters and all that. And, they always say like, oh, creating the characters. And I agree with that. The problem, though, is that you create something new, and it's going to take...
And there's no interest in it.
No one has any interest in it. It takes... Yeah. And even if it was good, it's going to take forever for it to become as popular as a Batman or a Superman or a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why these characters still live on is because they're one of the first superheroes to come out. And so, and some of them, they came out during, Superman and Captain America, they were used as World War II propaganda. So, like, it just gained popularity through that, and it still lives on to this day. Yes, because they're still making some great stories with them and all that, I know that, but still, like, you're, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, Miss Marvel is going up against people, other characters that have, like, incredible legacy, basically, and so it's just not really fair to compare her with any of the other characters. Moon Knight, I don't think it's as old as Miss Marvel. I think it is older, but the thing with that show is that it has what's the actor's name? Oscar Isaac. He's fairly popular. Movie star, basically. Fairly popular. Iman Vellani. People, and I hate this when people use this, but people were like, why am I interested in the character played by someone that I don't even know? That's a stupid reason. It doesn't matter.
Man, those people can go die. Like, really? Really?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, she got chosen for a reason, whatever. And so, yeah, because she doesn't have anything in the past, no one knows who she is, and I mean that can affect ratings and all that. But I mean, to say whether or not that's going to make the show bad or not, it's a dumb reason. And yeah, I mean, it's just on, like you mentioned too, it was going up against Obi-Wan Kenobi, which that's another character played by an actor who everyone loves and knows. So yeah, there was just a bunch of stuff going the
Also, we forget to mention this. I mean, the the reason the normies were able to do the reaction for Doctor Strange is because it dropped last week on Disney Plus. And it just like the Samba TV figures came out, and it was the biggest debut for a Marvel movie on Disney Plus. Just 45 days after it was released theatrically, but they dropped at the same time. I think for episode 3 of Miss Marvel, right? They dropped episode 3 at the same time as they dropped the season finale of Obi-Wan, and they also dropped Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, all at the same time. Which we know that took away from Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
So there's like so much attention. And then, of course, look, Miss Marvel's going to have its next week is its 5th episode, right? Now that's going to compete with Thor Love and Thunder in theaters. Like, the timing is just not great for Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
Also, Stranger Things 4.
Oh,
it's like this weekend, yes.
Yeah.
Literally, the day that we're recording, it's going to drop tonight at midnight.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, literally. So the finale to Stranger Things 4, the big 2 episodes that are 4 hours in total length from what I understand. So there's a lot. There's a lot of options out there that, and competition generally is good, but Miss Marvel is not. It's hard for Miss Marvel, who is a new character, relatively new character, as you say, to compete with all of this established property. Not for nothing, Obi-Wan and Thor, I'm sure, and Stranger Things, they are, really, really good stories. And, there's merit to why they're popular in the first place. But maybe Disney really, really mishandled when to drop the story. Because there could have been a time where it could have had, the attention to itself.
Yeah.
But it's not now. That's for sure. Also, this is the thing. Go back to that first episode, Kamala Khan is such a fangirl of all the things these Marvel stans are fans of. I'm sorry, but isn't that enough to merit your continuous attention and investment in this character? Is that not? Okay. But I really want to encapsulate, of course, Grace Randolph is an individual who is highly criticized in this industry, I would say for some very good reasons. And I know some people hate her immensely. I don't. I find her rather interesting because there are kernels of truths in her diatribe sometimes that I think really speak to where a lot of people are. And it really helps for me to understand what I don't want out of stories when I hear her speak. So that's why I'm going to play this clip to really kind of show you why this is happening, or, the takes that I'm hearing about how the story that is very good apparently is not good enough in this, MCU.
Charming and educational, they just ain't enough in today's ultra-competitive streaming market, and not when you're part of a large franchise. A franchise that has succeeded, specifically because all the pieces are supposed to connect to the whole. That's the MCU formula. So if something in the MCU does not participate in that formula, it's at a severe disadvantage, not only in terms of audience interest, but in the success of the character that's front and center. And I worry about Kamala Khan. I want Kamala Khan to succeed. But the MCU ain't helping her. Each story, whether it's on the big screen or the small screen in the MCU, is supposed to not only tell its own story, but it's supposed to contribute to the bigger picture. That's why people come back for every entry, because it's supposed to pay off. You can't have it start. That's the whole problem DC is having. These things shouldn't be skippable. And when it comes to Disney Plus shows, they need to give you a reason also to watch them when they drop. I think the same thing to some degree for the movies, to watch them in theaters. So far, the movies have kept that. But the Disney Plus shows, particularly, I'm sad to say, Ms. Marvel isn't giving viewers a reason to watch this when it drops at 3 a.m. That's the whole point of the insane drop time. You're like, well, I mean, for some of you, it's a perfectly normal drop time. But for the United States and even the West Coast where it's midnight, this is and also dropping first thing in the morning over in Europe. This is a crazy drop time, but it's supposed to be appointment television. You arrange your schedule around the drop of these shows because they're supposed to be so hot. So they gotta be hot, or the whole thing's just stupid. It had seemed like maybe Ms. Marvel was on the right track, by the way, dropping hints about Kingo and the 10 rings from Shang-Chi last episode. But today's episode was a giant step back into Marvel Netflix territory, where back when the shows couldn't connect to the larger MCU because Kevin Feige, quite frankly, hated Jeff Loeb, who was then the head of Marvel Television. And then Kevin Feige said yoink and took it over himself. And at first he was like, Kevin Feige was killing it in TV, but now it's like, not so easy, is it?
So what does she suggest are the things that she would fix?
But again,
yeah, it's
charming and educational.
I'm sorry, this thing.
But again, Easter eggs.
There it is.
And I wish that Ms. Marvel had that. It's so disappointing to me that the powers that be that Marvel don't look at the outline for the series and go, that's charming. What a great story. I'm so excited for you to tell it. But you've done absolutely nothing to make this competitive in the superhero space. So could you please go back in and layer in tweetable moments for each episode and some guest stars to connect it to the larger MCU? Please, and it's for your own sake, because I'm sure you would like a season 2.
That is everything I hate about the industry today. And in particular, if you notice, if you've been listening to this show for a long time, everything she just said is basically the complete antithesis of what David and I have been saying on this show for months about what are the issues that are happening with Marvel Studios today, the movies and the TV shows alike. And yet here she is like, well, no, it's supposed to be that every single piece of the story has to connect back to the whole. And if it doesn't, it is utterly useless. And what are we doing here? She said it was stupid that would be the case, and then even further saying that the writers should have been forced to come up with tweetable moments for each episode. And I'm like, how are you supposed to even write a story around that? That you can't. And then it was just like Easter eggs. Bitch, what are you talking about Easter eggs? There's been so many Easter eggs to the MCU. Mm-hmm. I mean, damage control in and of itself is a fucking Easter egg. Then, of course, you just mentioned it yourself, Kingo, which we forgot happened last week, but that was a great nod. Then, of course, I guess what it seems like a Kree arm or whatever, or the 10 rings being, connected to this bangle or whatever. The whole first episode were so many Easter eggs to the MCU. Like, what are you talking about?
People were obsessed with that Ant-Man podcast for quite a while.
Right, exactly. What? The whole thing took place at Camp Lehigh, from the Marvel movies. Like, you yourself had breakdowns, all of the freaking Easter eggs. Like, was that not enough?
Mm-hmm.
Really? And it also suggests that that's all you're here for is Easter eggs. It's like, it reminds us of why it is that so many people, and again, all due respect for most of you, I know you all love Mandalorian, but let's be real. Why do you love Mandalorian? Because Favreau and Filoni give you everything this bitch just said. Easter eggs, guest stars, moments, tweetable moments. But that's all they gave you. They didn't give you a story in that. They gave you the illusion of a story. So it's like, what? Like, the idea that there's nothing in this show, there's nothing of value to the show that it wouldn't, it doesn't deserve to be seen, whenever it drops at midnight, is very insulting. Just okay. But, yeah, we need more cameos. What the fuck? What the fuck was that? And I'm sorry to say, that's not even the last of it, because there is also something else I wanted to respond to in regards to, she was also bitching about the fact that Kamala Khan wasn't using her powers enough / and wisely enough, which, on this episode, I don't agree with, but okay, let's see what she has to say here. This stupid, god damn it.
Having a hard time imagining how Kamala Khan is going to handle herself in a movie, the upcoming The Marvels, when she can hardly handle herself in her own series. She hardly ever uses her powers. I mean, it was very frustrating this episode. You're like, use your powers! And when she does, it's fleeting, poorly done, and always the same moves. She's quickly becoming less Green Lantern and more armor from the X-Men, and armor never caught on.
First of all, I don't care. Like, I don't need to be seeing her constantly use her powers. Like, the reason why I watch, the story as Kamala Khan as the main character is because I'm interested in her as a character, as a person. I'm not as interested in, like, her, shooting, I guess, pieces of glass or whatever out of her arms or whatever, the shapes that she makes. That's not why I'm here for. But what we got in this episode, I thought was fairly sufficient and very well done, not just from a choreography standpoint. Again, it's not the most impressive, but it's not supposed to be to a certain extent because she's getting her start out in this. This is just episode 4, right? Like, she still hasn't figured out, ultimately, the full extent of what she can do. That's kind of the point here. Also, I have a hard time imagining this Marvel's movie that's going to feature Miss Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and then also Carol Danvers. She just said here that she has a hard time imagining how it is that Kamala Khan is going to keep up with those two. And I just think the opposite. I don't know how it is. And I said this in the chat yesterday. Monica Rambeau and Carol Danvers combined, between them have the combined charisma of a pen. Who gives a shit about them? Like, Kamala Khan can charm circles around those two characters. Kamala Khan has a character. Monica and Carol, not really. And the idea is going to be a movie that's going to come out in theaters next year. And I kind of feel bad for Brie Larson and for, God, I forgot her name already. Monica Rambeau, because they just can't compete, I'd say. That's how great the characterization for Kamala Khan has been like. And the idea that you can't see that is really eye-opening. David, your thoughts on this?
I agree with everything you just said. In terms of her powers, that's what I've been liking about the choreography, is that they're using her powers in a way that you can see that she's still progressing. She even did this one move in this episode that I was just like, oh, this might be a bit too advanced of a move, but you know what? I like it. It makes sense.
With every sequence, she's progressing more and more.
Yeah,
you
for
can
sure.
see it a little bit.
And I think by the end, she's going to kick some ass. I hope so. By the end of the show. And what was it? Oh, yeah, like how she's going to keep up with the other actresses. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. She's far better than those two that we've seen from them. There's that one line in Miss Marvel. It's like, why do you think you have Ant-Man powers? It's like, because we're both charming and look younger than we look. It's just like, yeah, that's her right there. So, yeah.
And also, since we're already speaking about that sequence, here's one of the, I would say, and it's pretty amazing to me. This show, for whatever reason, isn't having a lot of the other problems that some of the other shows have had. I've noticed with budget, like I know she complained, I saw her whole review here, she complained that there were still budgetary constraints with this and it felt cheap. And I don't agree. I don't think this looked cheap to me at all because I have seen how most TV shows treat episodes where they go internationally. And this was very well done. And as far as the powers are concerned, I think they look very good. I think the VFX work on the show is very, very good for a TV show. So, yeah, no complaints there. We see, I don't remember what the city is called, but they're in Pakistan for this entire episode. And it feels very much like they're actually there in the streets and how lively it feels like. And from what I can tell, no green screen to be seen. Whereas if you go back to Moon Knight, there was some really terrible, obvious green screen for a lot of the outside sequences in, I believe, Cairo they were at. It's just a complete day and night scenario, and I don't understand how you can't see the differences there.
Yeah. There was only one moment in this last episode where you did notice some green screen stuff, but it kind of worked for it. It felt dreamlike the scene and all that, and it's supposed. It kind of fit with the scene basically.
And
I haven't really complained about her powers. I thought they looked fine.
Exactly. So I mean, to me, it's like this show is really working. And again, one last thing before we get into the actual episode itself. When it comes to this 6-episode format, because this is kind of aggravating, because I have made no secret how much I dislike this 6-episode format, and then she agrees with me, but then she takes for the completely opposite reasons, and I can't quite frankly understand that myself. So I'm gonna go ahead and this is the last clip I'm gonna play here, and then that'll be it.
First off, Disney Plus needs to break its 6-episode formula, because not only is it not working, but it's becoming obvious with the latest shows. The cracks, the seams are showing. Great first episode to get everybody interested, then a really weak 2 to 4, which often will seem rushed, and then a strong finish with episode 5 and 6, trying to pull the audience back in and get excited about another season. You're like, well, this season wasn't so good, but the next season seems great. Come on. Right? But it's I mean, as far as tricks goes, that's a very good one, because we keep following, the next one's going to be real good, damn it. And I don't want to miss it, because maybe it won't follow the formula. I think the earlier Marvel shows didn't quite have this problem as much, because they were so connected to the MCU that we got lots of Easter eggs in those middle, weaker episodes that made up for them not being as good. But Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan, this is affecting Star Wars as well, they all have the same problems. I think even Hawkeye suffered from this a bit, but got a huge assist from Yelena, who got blipped. That was a big deal. That was great. And then also the return of Kingpin, even if we did not like the new Kingpin that we got. But it was a big deal that he was back.
Okay, already so many things there. I don't even know where to begin with. First of all, the problem across the board with the Disney Plus shows, Marvel and Lucasfilm together, is not that, well, I guess she pinpoints there's a problem, but she feels is because they all have 6 episodes, and each episode plays the same role in all the series, and it's all formulaic. There is a problem with how formulaic the 6 episodes are. Sure, I'll get to that. I would argue the problem with all of them across the board is that they don't feel like TV shows. They're aired like TV shows, but a lot of them are just movies that are like chopped up into 6 parts. And I do feel that's a problem. I honestly do feel that's a problem. And I think that can definitely, that speaks to some of these stories, because they were movies, didn't need to be stretched out to 6 episodes. They would have been far better if you had like 3, maybe 4 parts, and that would have been it. And then some of these stories could have been far grander if you actually said, you know what? Instead of taking this layout that was originally supposed to be a movie, why don't we adapt this into it being a TV show where we have the real estate, like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, maybe even as many as 11 episodes. Who knows? To actually have a season of television, I don't understand why we're so against that, but that I think is part of the problem. That's what's causing some of these issues. I just think it's just not enough episodes. And then also, the idea that the 4th episodes in each of the shows have been the weakest is... I feel like some of the best episodes of the entire show, of some of these shows, have been in the 4th episode. I think that's kind of apparent, but whatever. But the idea that somehow they all had strong finales, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, David, I'm going to ask this question. And if we're going to take into account all of the Marvel Disney Plus series, and let's go ahead and count the Lucasfilm series, Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan, which of those finales did you think, or did you work the best for you, or you thought was the strongest finale of all of those shows? Because I keep going back to one where, again, not perfect, but it delivered a lot of the emotional beats that it promised it would, where a lot of the other ones didn't. And no, I'm not referring to WandaVision, because I do think it was a very flawed finale.
Oh, okay, yeah. My first thought was WandaVision, but then I remembered Hawkeye.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it was just a build up to friendship between Hawkeye and Kate Bishop and all that, and we just need to resolve his whole thing with the net and all that, and this problem with the Watch and those other gangs and everything. And I mean, yeah, basically everything was resolved, and I don't think anything was left up in the open. It was a regular superhero ending where you know what's gonna happen next, but not in a plot kind of sense, but in a in a superhero sense where Kate Bishop was trying to come up with a name for herself, and then Hawkeye goes, "I got one," and it cuts there.
I think, like, yeah, I feel Hawkeye is among the stronger ones. I'm just going to go and say it's Obi-Wan for me. I'm going to say it's Obi-Wan because it delivered on those moments. It not only gave us, like, yeah, of course there were problems with Reva and maybe not caring as much about her, but it delivered on the moments between Obi-Wan and Vader. And it had a resolution. Like, it felt like the story came to a wonderful conclusion, whereas a lot of the other ones felt rushed, overly stretched, and only as soon as the fighting was over began setting up like other stories. Whereas here, no, it was. I mean, you could argue there were a couple of things in Obi-Wan that maybe point toward another season like Qui-Gon, but at the very end, it still felt complete. And I think that's key to a finale. Hawkeye did as well, so yeah, I would very much see that as well. Yeah, that's it. Let's go ahead and get into this episode, Miss Marvel. Episode 4. Again, great episode after great episode after great episode. Every single week just continuously builds on the greatness of what came before. The relationships with this family work so well. I mean, I'm a little sad we didn't get to see, like, Bruno and Akia, the dad, the brother, but I get it. But we get to see Nani. We get to see her grandmother. And I love the moments that the show, gives to just Nani and Kamala's mom. I love so much that this show refuses to forget about Kamala's mother and makes her a part of this story and one of our main leads here, or one of our main supporting leads. But you can tell there's so much there, and it again brings so many layers to her. How hard she's tried for years and years and years to connect to her mom, and her mom's just like, well, I told you what I believe, and you refuse to believe that. So what am I supposed to do? So, like, yeah, they both have, I think, some pretty fair, stances as to why their relationship hasn't always been the best. But you do see in those moments between them what does work there. So again, I appreciate that. I so love the devotion the show has to, ingraining the DNA of the show with Pakistani Muslim culture, or maybe just Pakistani culture, because it's not just exclusively, I guess, Muslim, because we do see, one of the relatives that approaches them at the patio restaurant, speaks in Hindi, and that's very different. So, and of course, that's all ingrained in partition, which, as we know, as we see in this episode, ends up being a far bigger focal point of the show than we previously imagined it would be. So, again, great that that's a big part of the show, and I love every aspect of it. Kamala is such a relatable character. It kind of, like, her experience of, like, going back to her home country, seeing relatives that you barely ever see, and engage in, customs, and then also food that you yourself have been, like, so out of practice on in terms of, like, the level of spice. There's that in and of itself, I feel, is so relatable to those of us who have, like, extended family members, like, for us, like, David and I are Hispanic, and I'm sure we have families, in Mexico and other places. And when we go visit them, this very much reminded me of, the experiences I have had when I've, have gone, a pretty far away to go visit family, and then this is kind of what it feels like. This is kind of what you do. She's just so relatable. Also being woken up, out of bed to go eat and everything. This is great stuff. And then as far as the narrative that we have here, we do have some pretty significant progression in the idea that there are these group of people. Remind me, David, if you can look it up, because I can never remember these freaking names. But Kamala, in doing her search for this train station, because that's, the vision of the train that she saw, that caused Nani to call them back to Pakistan. And she's attacked by this red-scarfed individual. And then they have their whole confrontation, but it ends up being really kind of this big revelation as to this other organization, or shall we say group of people that are out there that are aware of Kamala's people, of interdimensional travelers. I believe they're called the Jinn. I mean, Kamala's people are called the Jinn. But then what these people necessarily do, I'm not quite remembering at the moment, but it is all very interesting. And yeah, it was a really good moment for Kamala to, practice out her abilities, but then also really engage with look, is Kamala like that charming that it feels like every like boy she's in contact with like likes her, or what's going on here? Because, this is a boy that's, around her age, and yeah, they're friends. There's not going to be any romance there, but like she keeps getting like she keeps looking and she keeps getting looks back with these boys almost in every episode, with him, then also with Kamran, and then also with Bruno. So like, what's happening here? Is she just like naturally charming and oblivious to it? Or it's just funny to me how she keeps getting these scenes with them. So yeah, that was a thing. And when we get into the episode, we'll discuss like, the names when we get to there in a little bit. Overall, the only thing I have to say about this that would be negative is the clandestine. It feels like, considering how much effort is being put in by the writers and directors of the show and everything else, it's just really obvious that there's like nothing interesting. There's no effort being put into them because they just come off as like crazy assholes. And it's just, and it feels like, and also just kind of dumb because we keep seeing them again and again. And every interaction they have is somehow worse than the previous one. So they break out of the damage control institute or prison or whatever. They leave fucking Kamran. Okay, great. That mom's an even more bitch than we had previously thought. And then there's a whole battle sequence, which is, good and everything. It's just like, man, the whole time I'm thinking, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, are we ever going to get anything more off of you? More than just like, oh, I'm the bad guy and I don't care if it destroys people. Is that really all we're going to get from them? Because that's what it's starting to feel like. And I feel like, man, that's kind of lame. And look, it would work maybe if the clandestine were maybe, I don't know, more charismatic, maybe more likable. But I mean, if they gave them something, or, at least a scene to explain the actions that they're taking. We don't even get that. They just unleash mayhem. And, act like fucking serial killers, like going after Kamala. And look, I thought the action sequence at the end was very good. But from a characterization standpoint, these clandestine assholes, they're not working at all for me. And I don't think the show, it feels like they didn't have the time, or they just thought, well, this is a Marvel villain and you know what it is. And fuck it, well, unless we're going to get to something in the next 2 episodes, I don't know. David, those are my takeaways from this episode, your takeaways.
I really enjoyed seeing Kamala just being around. Where she go?
Pakistan.
Pakistan. But I mean, there was a specific name to it.
Oh, the train station?
No, like
Oh, you mean the city?
Yeah.
I don't know the name of the city. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We'll just call it the city.
But yeah. Either way, Pakistan. And just
not Kachi, is it? Is that Kachi?
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
Kachi or
something like that. Yeah.
And I kind of like that she was almost out of her element in that place. Like she really knew nothing of that culture and everything. Everything seemed so new to her, and so that was actually kind of interesting. And then in terms of those the red daggers, that's what they call themselves. I wish we would have gotten more information from them. About them. Yeah, it was just kind of, we just get told simple stuff like, yeah, we're the Red Daggers. I don't know, like, do they hunt down the clandestines or anyone from that dimension? I don't think they ever explained what exactly.
It wasn't too clear, was it?
Yeah, that's the problem. I really don't know what these characters are or anything. And so I don't know. We could have gotten a whole lot more from them. That's really my biggest complaint. Everything else, I thought it was fine. It was amazing. It was mainly that, just kind of like how out of her element she was in her own culture and everything. And then it just kind of leads to the whole last fight scene, which it was pretty cool. My one complaint though is that one lady, the mom of the clandestine group. She was holding her daggers kind of weirdly. Like, it just seemed like she never held weapons before in her life. Like, she was just like...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just seemed like she was so stiff and held them right in front of her chest like that. And everything. It's just like, you gotta hold them in a way to look cool. Come on. Just, like, I don't care if it's, like, not the proper way, but, like, you gotta hold it in the cool way. So, yeah, that's really my one complaint about that fight scene. And then... there was something else. Fuck. No, I can't remember. But I mean, everything leading up to the ending of her in the train station, that was very interesting, and I'm curious what they're gonna do. So that's interesting. But overall, though, again, this is mainly a family show. I don't really see it as a superhero show, and I think they're just to keep doing a better job at connecting the family, especially Kamala and her mom.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into this episode. So where do we get off this week? Again, by the way, we've been messing up so badly at these, so like maybe if we forget a moment, it's fine. Yeah,
I was thinking actually, instead of going like throughout the episode, let's just go by character.
Let's do that. Yeah.
I think that might be better. So I mean, first off, he got those cousins, so she meets her cousins in Pakistan. They pick her up and everything, and I mean, they just kind of like, what about them is that they don't really connect with Kamala. Like, she's just sort of there with them, and basically leave her alone later on. Which I mean, it's fine because she has to do something on her own and everything. But like, that was just really the one interesting thing about them is just how disconnected she is from them, and there's this kind of like, they keep messing with her and not messing with her, like they keep kind of like making little jokes about how she doesn't know anything about Pakistan, anything about the culture and everything, which is totally normal thing.
Relatable.
It's very relatable.
Very relatable. You become the butt of the joke when you go to a place that, for whatever reason, is like thrusted upon you to know every little detail about, even though you've spent like no time there. But yeah, it's one of those things that, it's one of those like jokes that family likes to throw at each other for whatever reason. Yeah, and especially with stuff like, it's just little things that you just like completely different from everyone else. The one moment, it was when they were at the little restaurant, she couldn't go into because she was wearing jeans, and at one point she gets this like, it looked like to me like a little piece of cake or something, or like a muffin, whatever. And she takes a bite of it, but it was like super, super spicy and everything. And then everyone starts laughing at her. Wow. That was so relatable because my family always makes fun of my dad for not being able to handle spicy stuff. Yeah. I'm sure they don't just make fun of him. They just allow things to happen so they can laugh at it, right? Probably. Yeah. Which is what happened, I feel like, in this episode. Because like, or in that moment, I mean, they could have warned her But I guess they thought that she knew. I mean, they also could have warned her not to wear jeans.
Yeah,
but
that's true. I mean,
maybe they forgot. I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe they just didn't know. Maybe because they always wore specific things when they went there, and they just thought it was normal. And so they just didn't really think, oh, shoot, yeah, you can wear jeans. They probably just didn't know if it was a rule, too. But yeah, so it's just little stuff like that was pretty relatable. And then we meet her grandma, and she was very interesting. Basically, when their first conversation about the whole bracelet thing, she basically mentions that she's a djinn, it's in her DNA, and she got that information from her dad. And all that. And the one thing that Kamala was kind of freaking out about is that she just thought this whole thing was normal to grandma. Like she was really nonchalant about it. But for Kamala, ever since finding out, her whole world has just been spiraling. And I love that little line she says. It's like I'm trying to put like 100 pieces together, but they keep falling apart or something, or they keep falling apart on me, and all that. But she just tries to calm her down. It's like, I don't see it the way you do. From my perspective, this was always just a good thing. This was always a normal thing. That bracelet saved my life once. So, it's just a little bit of a barrier between the two. And then I completely forgot, what was the other conversation they had? It was in the balcony.
Isn't that after though? Or
yeah, that was way after.
Well, it was way after. In the balcony, yeah, I remember it being a nice scene. I don't quite remember the context of what was happening there. I guess they were getting into the history of her. I don't know. I can't remember, honestly. There's so many things happening.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, this also with the grandma, though. There was also the little scene with her and her daughter, Kamala's mom, where Kamala's mom, she was just stressed out the whole time. Like it really seemed like she did not want to be here at all. And so
she's cleaning.
Yeah. So she's cleaning to like de-stress herself. But finally, they have a little conversation between the two, and she basically talks about how she's never connected with her mom her whole life because all she ever hears from her is just these stories or theories that they don't really get into, but about her life, I guess, about who she is, maybe, or something. And yeah, that created a disconnect between the two. And so finally she says, I didn't want these stories, I just wanted you in my life and all that, blah, blah, blah. And so it was just a little nice moment, but what I loved about Kamala's mom in this episode, though, is that as we go more into these days of them in Pakistan, we learn more about the mom and her past and everything that we learn. That's what's connecting her and Kamala more and more. There was a moment where they were in that restaurant, and I think it was like a family member came up to them, or some friend. She mentions that the mom was a bit of a rebel when she was growing up or something, and Kamala was just like, "The fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah,
and everything. But and then after that conversation with her mom, they were just kind of like connecting through their experiences here and everything. But yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot. What do you think so far? No,
look, the great interactions, just great insight into who these people are. And again, look, I appreciate shows. Well, let's just say this: I appreciate it when superhero shows, especially, take the time to just have two characters talk about each other and their lives. You think that would be like, I don't know, kind of expected, but it's not so much so. But yeah, great moments. Appreciated all of them, and I'm really curious to see when they're gonna tell her about Kamala's powers and that they've been a thing and ongoing.
Yeah, I feel like the next episode they kind of probably have to tell her or something, because the fucking clandestine and everything. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're after her. She's she's just been in danger this whole time, and I feel like even the mom, not the mom, the grandma wants to like tell. I mean, obviously she wants to tell her because why would she want the mom there too? I don't know. So yeah, I feel like this is what I love about her not being in her element. Kamala is that, like I mentioned before, it's like the more we're here, the more she knows about her mom. And that's kind of what's connecting her more and more. And it's a fun thing to kind of like that this is always the disconnect between the two. And I don't think they're ever going to bring it up, but like the disconnect between Kamala and her mom is that they're both from different places, from different cultures and all that. I remember I listened to a bunch of podcasts with people who are like Korean American, Mexican American, and all that. And one of the biggest things that they always had trouble with both of their parents is that the parents want them to act like children were in their culture, in their home, in their hometown, and everything. But because the hosts of the podcast were born and raised in America, or either came to America or raised here, they have something different between the two, and it's always separated them and all that. You mentioned before that we're both Hispanic. We both have been to Mexico before, and when I visited there last year, I really thought I really thought it was going to be something different for me. That was the one thing I was there for is the food. Like I thought, like I want to try something new. I want to try something like authentic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but turns out my mom's made everything that I've already tried. Like I just
wow.
There was no surprise for me at all. I think the only thing was just a piece of candy that was like chile. It's kind of like sticky chile and bugs. I tried bugs there, but it was fine.
Wow.
Yeah, it's salty. It's fine. But yeah, it's just like, I didn't feel that disconnect because my mom, she's Mexican as fuck. But, it's funny. And, but it's a weird thing though, because my dad, he was born in Tijuana and came here as a kid. And so he was raised in America, and I don't see him like Mexican at all. I feel like he's like America. It's just kind of like that's I had the mix of the two, and somehow that's how we always connected though, through each other and everything.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely kind of one of the many changes that's been happening for the last for the last two generations, I would say, is the further I mean, if you wanted your kids to be, ingrained in the culture of your home country, I mean, you could have stayed there, but it's really unrealistic to expect that you can do that from like another country, and that they wouldn't be exposed to a completely different culture that you weren't purview to. That's just what's going to have to happen. And I know a lot of these cultures, look, it's not as if I myself look forward to a lot of tradition and, traditional aspects to culture, themselves being like, washed away or diluted down. But I just feel like the more exposed you are to different cultures, to different groups of people, to all walks of life, the better human being you become and the more compassion you form, And I feel like for a lot of these very traditional cultures, which, granted, I'm sure they have their positives to them and how they view life and everything, but they also come with a lot of rationales, a lot of perspectives, and a lot of prejudices. Let's be real about that. That have remained ingrained in the culture because of, for a long-standing viewpoint that you are expected to just carry on the way of life that we have. And it seems very much so that these newest two generations, the millennials and the Zoomers, have been very resistant to that and have embraced a more unified, international culture, if you will. Yeah, it's a very fascinating thing to see happen. And I feel like that there are positives and negatives to both, but my point of view has always been like, well, I think ultimately that is marching toward a more unified planet, a more unified people if we do that. Of course, I mean, that suggests that we can overcome the rise in right-wing authoritarianism around the world, before it kills us, but, that's another story. But, yeah, it's very interesting to see, that's for sure. But, we'll see. That's why I love movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which also I think touches on this as well. And you get to see the good that can come, I feel, from that. So, yeah, very interesting aspect to it, for sure.
I've been looking through the episode, and I remember what the conversation was with Kamala and her grandma.
Okay.
It was just basically her asking her like if she found what she was looking for here, and she said,
"Oh, after she left,
she said like it was quite a lot that I learned and everything." And basically, it was a conversation between the two about her trying to figure out what her powers are, but also who she is, what she is, and everything. And the grandma was just kind of like, even at my age, kid, I'm still trying to figure that out. I left the home.
Oh, that's right. That is so right. Now that you mentioned it, and I recall that sequence, and I recall that line. And can we just pause and just appreciate how rare it is to see that line of dialogue be spoken by someone who is at the end of their life or toward the end of their life? Like the idea that she could spend all her time living and still say, I'm still trying to figure out who I am. There is something just so comforting and reassuring in that, because a lot of the things that our generation particularly has been exposed to is that you should be ashamed if you don't know who you are at age 25. And you're a failure if you don't. And I feel like I've always raged against that kind of mentality, and it's so nice. I feel seen when I, hear stuff like that. And the idea that she's like, yeah, that's okay. I'm still trying to figure out who I am and who I want to be. It sometimes takes a lifetime to figure that out, and I feel that's just the truth of it. And the idea that we're, speaking of culture, but we're ingrained in this kind of mentality throughout all of civilization that if you don't have your life figured out by a certain age, well, then you mean nothing and you have nothing of value. It's so nice to see in media something completely opposite that mentality be shown here. I love that moment. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. And also a part of the reason, though, it's because she left her home. She lived in one place, and then she had to leave because of horrible circumstances and everything, and she had to figure out who she was, who she can be in this new place, and it's still taking her forever, especially because there's other changes going on. One being,
again, just like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where Evelyn, Michelle Yeoh's character, very much middle-aged and feels kind of like adrift in life. That's kind of the story of that movie. And so one of the lessons where she comes to a place where, from a certain perspective, it would seem like her life was a waste, but she comes to appreciate the life that she has. That's the kind of mentality that I'm glad, I'm so grateful that we're seeing that in more and more of these stories. By the way, if you have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, by the way, I also saw the Normies reaction, the reaction channel to that movie, because it was on digital, I think 2 weeks ago. Oh my God, it was like watching that movie for the first time again. Honestly, I think it's one of the best films ever made. Yeah. No hyperbole, it's the truth. And you need to go out of your way to go see it. And my prediction is that movie is going to end up being at the very top of a lot of top 10 lists for 2022. Oh, for sure. Just putting that out there. It's an amazing fucking movie. I think I got an update that, because I pre-ordered the Blu-ray on Walmart, it's getting here this weekend. So for those of you who are listening, like Alexis, who have access to our Movies Anywhere and Vudu, it should be very available for you to see, I feel, as of this weekend. So cool. Just putting it out there. And for you, of course, David, to see as many times as you want.
Yeah, I've only seen it once. And I do want to see it again, for sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, that movie got a little bit overhyped for me, but like I know it's a great movie, so I need to watch it again. Did you see the bloopers that came out today? As there was like a blooper video. I saw it on Instagram.
No,
but yeah,
no.
It was funny. You should look it up.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
The grandma conversation.
yeah. No, I mean, I think I said everything I need to say.
And then after that, we were going to.
I think we should talk about the Red Dagger guy.
Yeah.
So she's at the train station at one point, looking around, and then she gets attacked. Cool fight scene again. I really like the way she uses her powers. You know, I feel like you can get, at least choreography wise, you can get very creative. I don't know about like just kind of superpowers. What I mean though is like she keeps creating platforms and doing kind of like these flips and everything to get away from him. And
sure. Yeah.
And so yeah, cool fight scene. But then he realizes that she's different from the clandestines. They called her a Noor, whatever. And so he's just kind of like, okay, that's weird. Oh, and then he brings up Aisha, and she's just like, oh, fuck, how the fuck do you know about Aisha? And I think she mentions that that's her great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother, yes.
And so he decides, oh, okay, cool. And he takes it to his hideout, basically, where the Red Dagger headquarters, and he meet this other guy. And basically they explain to her everything. And yeah, so I like that bit of information, though, that they mentioned that if she opens the portal, it's not gonna like just take the clandestines back. It will bring their world into ours, and possibly destroy our world. So I like that bit of information, that there's another reason why she shouldn't open the portals and all that. But I really wish there was more. Like I said, I have no idea what exactly these Red Daggers are supposed to do. If they could have at least.
Yeah, I found myself having to rewind just to make sure I understood what they were saying about like what they do in response to this world. So I guess like if I'm to understand this correctly, they're supposed to stop the clandestine from getting back to their world because their world would eventually consume this reality.
Okay. So it's just
right?
Stop the clandestines, but I guess they can't get to them or anything. I wish they would have given more information about the clandestines. Like, what exactly have they been doing all these centuries, possibly, and all that? Were they hiding out? Did they create chaos or something? Or were they just living their lives? Again, this is the one time that I wish we would have gotten an info dump, unlike the last episode. So, yeah, that was a bit confusing. It's raining outside. Do you hear that? I hope the mic's not picking it up, but...
Maybe when you mentioned it, I heard something, but not on my side. Okay. But it's fine.
Yeah.
I'll
it's a rain sound. I'm sure people will like it. But yeah, and then later on though, she starts connecting with the guy that she fought with, and there was this moment though where he asked her to hang out, and she meets him at some beach with some friends and all that. And there was a funny moment where they gave her some food, and she's like, "Is it spicy?" And they can make fun of her again. That was relatable to me. We always make fun of my dad for not handling his spicy food. And so I found it funny. But I think this is one moment though where she was okay with feeling out of her element, because they were, in a way, without doing it on purpose, they were kind of like teaching her more about her culture. It was a nice moment, basically. But yeah, later on, I guess they're teaching her how to control her powers, how her powers work exactly, and you get that thing of like, she's basically connecting to that other world where her great grandmother was from, but because of her humanity and possibly the bracelet, she's not fully crossing over. She's staying connected with that, which I'm curious if they can play around with that. I wonder if maybe the more disconnected she is from her humanity, the more it will take over. That'd be kind of interesting. But then they get attacked. Like I mentioned, there's a cool fight scene, but one of the Red Dagger guys gets killed, which sucks. Well, I mean, actually, honestly, he did kind of cool because he sees the two of them. You know, they're both kids and everything, and he just like straight up kills one of the clandestines and basically sacrifices himself. So it was a pretty cool death. And then towards the end though, they were surrounded. The mom clandestine woman like stabs a dagger, and that's when Kamala gets sent back in time. Or at least...
Yeah, at first I was so... I was like, okay, is this like a more... is this like a greater vision than she had before? Did she really get sent back in time? But I think she really got sent back in time. And I'm like, holy shit. That's not an element I thought was something we were going to cover, but I guess it makes sense considering how much has been like... alluded to partition. By the way, that sequence in the train station, wow, that was filmed really well, honestly. But I'm kind of like, okay, well, what the fuck does this mean? What happens now? So I guess great cliffhanger, but I'm like, wow, I don't know where this is gonna go.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Yeah, but I mean, that is the one thing I'm curious though, is that. Is she just projecting herself? Like, is she going to affect time at all? Is she going to be the one that created the stars in the sky?
Right, that's what I thought too. She's the one that helps her grandmother get back on the train after she lost her father.
Yeah, that's the one curious thing. But yeah.
And also, is it temporary, or are we going to spend the entire next episode back in time?
I think it's just going to be temporary, because the next episode is going to be the 5th one, and I feel like...
Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover left before... Again, this is part of the issues that happen. Like, ideally, if you want to spend a whole episode back in time, I'm all for it. But who has the time when you only have 6 episodes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would be an interesting one though too. Is like she had she kind of maybe she fucks up and she has to fix her timeline, and so that I don't know. You really could have a cool episode right there and everything, but no, I think it's just gonna be part of it. And once she realizes like what exactly happened on that day, because
if you do that episode, then you have episode 6 to wrap everything up.
And clearly she goes back to Jersey because
we have to go back to Jersey.
Yeah, she's like in full costume, and so I feel like that's what I'm hoping.
We have to go back to Jersey because we have the brother, the dad, Nakia, and Bruno are over there, and at least we forget. I guess Damage Control is a story here because they are looking for her, I guess. So there's a lot of things to go back and wrap up.
I feel like they might just wrap up the clandestine story in the 5th episode, and then they wrap up the Damage Control story in the 6th.
That depends on like what is revealed about Aisha.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think it's only gonna be part of it. Just figure out what happened with Aisha, and then part of it's gonna be with the clandestines, and then another part of it is going to be her connecting with her mom and the grandma even more now, because now she knows the full truth and possibly revealing her powers. So I am very curious what's going to happen. I feel like I'm kind of hoping the 5th episode might be like the best one.
Yeah, I want to get some reactions here since we're done with this recap. From Bisha K. Ali, who is one of the writers for Miss Marvel, saying here on Twitter, "We are moved to see many of you asking questions about partition as a result of Miss Marvel. I wanted to share a reading list for those who might explore more. Feel free to send us recommendations like you're at it." So wonderful to see that reaction from the writer. By the way, they're really killing it right now on this series. So I'm very happy to see that. And man, it's a really nice series, man. Let's see here. Oh man, I'm just really happy this exists. I really, really am. And I hope the show can really continue to be as good for these last 2 episodes, because I always get nervous when we reach the 5th and the 6th episode, because I'm like, oh, please don't fumble. Can we have like a really great season ending?
I think, I mean, I said this about Moon Knight and I was kind of wrong about it, but you know, I do think this time we're gonna have like
fingers crossed this time. Fingers
we're gonna
crossed.
have a full conclusion, because I think they'll want to do that, because the biggest cliffhanger that they'll probably get is some connection with her and Captain Marvel. And I really wouldn't mind that. I honestly would love to see Kamala's reaction to meeting Captain Marvel or something, because, oh my god, that'd be so much fun.
I would really hope, now, I guess I'll have to see how it's handled, but I would hope that if they are going to have like a Captain Marvel cameo, I would imagine that would be for a post-credit scene, because I think, if I'm being real with you, and I discussed this with Peter in our podcast last week when we brought up Miss Marvel, but I feel like that's the only reason Damage Control is even here, right? Because they're going to serve as the bridge between the events of this show and getting her in touch with Captain Marvel? Yeah?
I don't know. I really don't.
Because the only reason I would think that is because that character guy knew in Spider-Man No Way Home, when Peter Parker was asking about Nick Fury's whereabouts, he definitively said that Nick Fury is off-world. So, if I'm going to use that very, very, like, vague, or not vague, but that small thing, and, like, extrapolate something out of it, it would be that maybe Damage Control works in tandem with SWORD, which is supposed to be the organization that Nick Fury runs from the stars. So, and I imagine Captain Marvel has to be affiliated with SWORD some way or the other, because Nick Fury is in charge of it. So, and I also understand that Nick Fury is supposed to also be in the Marvels. And I also, forgot to mention this as well, but there's this apparently Secret Invasion, which finished filming a few months back, is about to undergo 4 months of reshoots from what I sent over, which is interesting, because it's not unusual when you have a few weeks or even a month or two of reshoots, but 4 months of reshoots? That seems, let's just be real with you, that seems concerning.
Yeah. Unless
they're going to plan and add more cameos or something in to make it a bigger thing. Because the Secret Invasion is supposed to be a Nick Fury story, because apparently at some point they are going to do an actual Secret Invasion movie with like all the MCU cameos and everything. And I'm only mentioning that because, Nick Fury, and then that's going to come back to Miss Marvel, and who knows, right? But I don't know. That's why I would say that the Damage Control element is even in this show, because we need a connection to the MCU.
Yeah.
That's what I would say to that. Anything else before we go this week?
No. I think I covered everything.
Okay. Well, and the city was Karachi.
Karachi, okay.
Was that what we said?
I think so. I think that
I don't remember.
What you said. I thought that was like another RA on it, like Karachi or something like that. I don't know, but
all right. Well, thank you all for listening this week to our show. We'll be back next week with a recap of the 5th episode. And then, of course, stay tuned with our programming in July. We'll have reviews for the finale of Stranger Things 4, Thor: Love and Thunder, of course, Miss Marvel, and many other projects for sure. Stay under our spotlight, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.